Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're taking a closer look at Recursion Pharmaceuticals. Ticker is RXRX.
That's right. A company really making waves, especially for folks watching the biotech space.
Definitely getting a lot of buzz. And I think, what really caught everyone's eye recently was that FDA news.
Exactly. The shift away from mandatory animal testing for certain drugs, that's got big implications.
Huge. Especially for a company like Recursion, which is, well, built around using AI for drug discovery. So our aim today is really to unpack all that.
Yeah, look at the developments, the tech, the financials, give people thinking about investing a clearer picture.
Okay, so let's start right there. The FDA announcement. What exactly happened?
So on April 10th, just recently, the FDA said they're planning to phase out the requirement for animal testing for some drug types. Specifically, they mentioned monoclonal antibodies to start.
Monoclonal antibodies.
Right.
Okay, those are pretty important, right?
Yeah.
Used for things like cancer, autoimmune diseases.
Big category, yes. So this isn't a small change.
So what are they suggesting instead? If not animals, then what?
Well, they're pointing towards a few things. AI-based computational models, which is, right in Recursion's wheelhouse. Also, human-based lab models, like organoids, organ-on-a-chip technology, and using existing real-world safety data more effectively.
Wow. That sounds like a pretty modern approach. And it's happening now, not like years down the road.
Effective immediately, that's what they said. For the investigational new drug applications, the INDs.
The IND, that's the first step to get a drug into human trials, right?
Exactly. And they're even starting a pilot program for some monoclonal antibody developers using these non-animal methods as the main evaluation path.
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting for Recursion, doesn't it? Their whole model is based on AI discovery.
You'd think so.
Yeah.
I mean, the potential benefits seem pretty clear. First off, potentially lower R&D costs.
Animal testing is expensive, right?
And time-consuming.
Very. So secondly, maybe faster development timelines. If these AI and lab models give good data quicker, the whole process speeds up. Makes sense. Anything else?
Well, possibly a regulatory edge. If the FDA accepts their AI models as robust alternatives, maybe getting through approvals becomes a bit smoother.
Interesting.
And, just being a leader in using these new methods could strengthen their position against competitors.
Right. And you really saw the market react, didn't you? Recursion stock jumped right after that news came out in April.
It did, but we should also remember that jump came after a really tough stretch for the stock.
Yeah, it had fallen quite a bit beforehand.
Oh, significantly. From early January 2024, it was down, around 70%? From over $12 down to below $4 by early April 25.
Wow.
So this FDA news was definitely a much-needed catalyst. The stock surged a very large percentage in just one day.
So it seems the market really connected the dots there. The FDA's move and Recursion's core technology.
Looks that way. Which I guess brings us to what makes Recursion's approach special.
Yeah, let's dig into that. They use AI, but how exactly?
Yes. Well, fundamentally, they're using AI to try and speed up finding and developing new drugs. And they've invested heavily in the computing power to do it.
Right, I heard about their new supercomputer, BioHive 2.
That's the one. It's a beast. 2 exaflops of AI performance.
Exaflops? That sounds like a lot.
It is. Think a billion calculations a second. It's powered by over 500 Nvidia H100 GPUs. They say it's nearly 5 times faster than their old one.
And the biggest in the pharma industry.
Supposedly, yeah. And they're not just relying on that.
Oh.
They also use NVIDIA's DGX Cloud with Oracle Cloud infrastructure. So it's like a hybrid approach, giving them more flexibility.
Okay, massive computing power. But AI needs data, right? Good data.
Absolutely critical. And that's another key piece for Recursion. They've built this enormous proprietary data set.
How big?
Over 23 petabytes.
Petabytes. Okay, translate that for me.
Think millions of filing cabinets full of text. It's vast. And crucially, it comes from their own experiments that they run in-house.
So they're generating their own specific data, not just using public stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Tailored for their AI models.
Right.
And they use this data to build what they call phenom foundation models.
Phenom models?
Yeah, think of AI that learns to understand biology by looking at cell images. They use this technique called masked pixel prediction, kind of like teaching AI by asking it to guess hidden parts of the image. It learns what normal cells look like, how they change.
Okay, that sounds complex.
Yeah.
How does that help find drugs?
It lets them run experiments incredibly fast. High-throughput screening.
How fast?
They're doing over 2 million experiments a week now, guided by the AI to focus on the most promising areas.
2 million a week. That's staggering.
It really is. And they have this workflow engine called LOWE.
Low WE.
Yeah, an AI engine, but it has a natural language interface, so scientists can kind of talk to it in plain English to set up experiments, makes the AI tools more accessible.
Like telling your computer what experiment to run just by talking to it. That's pretty cool.
It is, and you mentioned Nvidia before. That partnership is pretty deep.
How so?
Well, Nvidia invested $50 million in Recursion. That's a big signal.
Definitely a vote of confidence.
Plus, Recursion gets priority access to Nvidia's latest tech support. And there's even talk they might commercialize some of Recursion's AI models through Nvidia's BioNeMo platform.
Wait, so they could potentially license their AI out?
That seems to be the idea. It could be a whole other revenue stream down the line.
And does this AI actually work? Any examples?
Well, they've highlighted past examples, like earlier models predicting COVID drug candidates with, they said, 90% accuracy, and screening something like 36 billion compounds in under a month.
36 billion. Okay, that's speed you just can't get with old methods.
Not even close. It really shows the potential scale.
All right, so the tech sounds impressive. Let's switch gears a bit to the financials. Always important for investors. We mentioned the stocks ride.
Yeah, quite the roller coaster. That big drop from early 24 down to about $3.89 in April 25, then the pop on the FDA news. Shows how sensitive it is.
And something else stands out, the short interest is really high, isn't it?
Exceptionally high. We're talking somewhere around 86 to 88 million shares shorted.
Which is what percentage of the shares available to trade?
That's roughly 23% to 29% of the public float. A very significant number of investors betting the price will go down.
That's a strong bearish signal from that group. But then you look at the options market.
Right, and it tells a slightly different story, doesn't it? The put-call ratio has been quite low recently, like 0.12 to 0.14.
Meaning more people are buying calls, bets the price will go up than puts?
Relatively speaking, yes. So options traders seem more bullish, at least in the near term. It's an interesting contrast.
Two different camps fighting it out, maybe? What about the company's overall size? Market cap?
As of April 25, somewhere in the $1.8 to $2.3 billion range. Around 395 million shares outstanding overall.
Okay.
And about 306 million of those are the public float we mentioned. Also worth noting, the number of shares is up about 32% in the last year.
Why the increase? Dilution? Merger related?
Likely partly due to the merger with Exscientia, yeah.
Got it. And how did their last earnings report look? Q4 2024?
Not great on the surface. Revenue was down quite a bit compared to the year before.
And losses?
Net loss actually grew, almost $179 million for the quarter. Spending on R&D and admin costs was up too. Cash used in operations also increased.
So burning through cash, is that a worry?
Well, they are investing heavily, clearly, in the platform, the pipeline, integrating Exscientia, but their cash position still looks pretty strong.
How strong? What's the runway?
They ended 2024 with over $600 million in cash and equivalents. They project that's enough to last into 2027.
Okay, that's a decent cushion.
And remember, the Exscientia merger added cash too. Pro forma, they were looking at around $850 million post-merger.
And that merger is supposed to save money eventually, right? Synergies.
That's the plan. They're targeting over $100 million in annual synergies. Plus, they see potential milestone payments coming from partnerships.
Oh, yeah. How much?
Potentially around $200 million in the next couple of years. And long-term, maybe billions from those deals, even before royalties, if drugs succeed.
And who are these partners again? Some big names.
Yeah, they've got deals with Russian Intech, Sanofi, Bayer, Merck GA, generally focused on using Recursion's AI to find targets in areas like oncology, immunology.
Makes sense. And the Exscientia merger itself, what was the thinking there?
Seemed strategic, combining Recursion's strength in, let's say, biology exploration with Exscientia's expertise in precision chemistry.
So covering more bases in the drug discovery process.
Exactly, building a more end-to-end platform. And it expanded their pipeline in oncology, rare diseases, infectious diseases without much overlap.
Okay, so platform, data, partnerships, cash, but it all comes down to the drugs, right? What's in their clinical pipeline?
Right, that's the ultimate test. They do have several candidates moving forward. For example, REC-617 for solid tumors. It's in phase 12 trials, showing some early promise.
Okay.
Then there's REC-994 for cerebral cavernous malformations, CCM. That's a rare blood vessel condition in the brain. That one actually met its primary goals in a phase 2 study, so that's quite positive.
Meeting phase 2 endpoints is a significant step. Any others starting up?
Yes, REC-1245 for certain solid tumors and lymphoma just started phase 12, and several others are in earlier stages.
So a busy pipeline. What should investors be watching for?
Well, they're expecting about 10 clinical data readouts over the next 18 months.
10. Wow. That's a lot of potential news flow.
Definitely. Each one of those readouts could be a major catalyst, positive or negative. They've also been getting clearances, INDs, and CTAs to start new trials, so things are moving.
Okay, so lots happening clinically. What do the Wall Street analysts think of all this? What's the consensus?
The general view seems, I'd say, cautiously optimistic. The average price target as of April was around $8 or $9.
And the rating?
Consensus is overweight, which is generally positive.
Yeah.
But there's a range in those targets. Morgan Stanley, for instance, recently lowered their target to $8, kept an equal weight rating. So not everyone is fully convinced yet.
So analysts see upside on average, but with some caution. What are the specific potential positives people should watch for?
Well, obviously, those clinical trial results we mentioned, good data there would be huge.
Makes sense.
Also, more clarity on how the FDA actually implements this new animal testing policy. That could really highlight the benefit for Recursion.
Right.
Hitting milestones and those big partnerships, getting those payments, that builds confidence.
And the short interest?
Yeah, that's always lurking. With so many shares shorted, any significant positive news could potentially trigger a short squeeze.
Forcing short sellers to buy back shares quickly, driving the price up.
Exactly. It adds a layer of volatility, but potential upside too.
But it's not all upside potential. We need to talk risks too.
Absolutely critical. Number one is probably the cash burn. Yes, they have cash now, but they are spending a lot. If that continues without offsetting revenue soon,
They might need to raise more money later, potentially diluting shareholders.
it's a possibility. And of course, clinical trial failures. That's just the reality of biotech. Many promising drugs don't make it.
True. What else?
Competition. The AI drug discovery space is getting crowded. Lots of smart people, other companies trying similar things.
So they need to stay ahead.
They do. Also, integrating Exscientia smoothly, actually achieving those $100 million synergies merger integrations are always challenging.
Good point.
And even with the positive FDA news, there's still broader regulatory uncertainty. Drug development is complex, rules can change.
Okay, so wrapping this up, Recursion Pharmaceuticals. It definitely seems like an interesting company right at this intersection of AI and biotech.
Very much so. And that FDA policy change feels like a potential tailwind for their whole approach.
They've got the tech platform, the data, big partnerships, a pipeline with upcoming news, and decent cash for now.
All true. A lot of potential building blocks are there.
But, and it's a big bit, investing here isn't without significant risk. It's still biotech, still largely developmental stage.
Exactly. High potential reward, but high risk too. Success isn't guaranteed no matter how good the tech sounds. The path from lab to approved drug is long and difficult.
And the whole AI and drug discovery field is still pretty new, relatively speaking.
It is. Recursion looks like a leader, but we're still figuring out how transformative these approaches will ultimately be across the industry.
So for anyone listening who's considering Recursion, it demands careful thought, weighing that growth potential against the very real risks.
Absolutely. Which kind of leaves us with a final thought, maybe. As AI keeps getting better and regulators maybe continue to adapt, how will that reshape pharma innovation?
Yeah, and what will that mean for companies like Recursion in the long run? It's a fascinating space to watch.
Definitely one for careful analysis and ongoing due diligence if you're involved.
Well said.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. If you found this helpful, please do subscribe, hit that like button, and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss our next exploration into the companies moving